Hey everybody, so the Latching has been out for a couple weeks now. It's been doing pretty good. I've been, pretty proud to see it chugging along in its sales, going places, seeing the page reads go up on Kindle Unlimited. So I just wanted to take like a moment to talk about, some of my inspirations for the book, and like where some of my ideas came from. Firstly, though, I wanted to give a shout out to at Blood and Boots. Her name is Bethany. She was one of my beta readers, and she provided like this really in-depth like email detailing what was working about the book, what she felt wasn't working about the book, and she provided some of my favorite quotes that I've ever received as a writer. At one point she said, this left me with a sense of bleakness that I wasn't expecting, and another was, it's very daring to write something as depraved as this, which as a horror writer, those are very high compliments. So I just wanted to give her a quick shout out, because like she really like helped the book out in that last stretch, before I published it. So yeah, at Blood and Boots, she's really awesome. So yeah, check her out. So, there's some really obvious like inspiration points. I mean, you got your Pet Cemeteries, you got your Talk to Me's, your Bring Her Backs, Doris Lessing's The Fifth Child. I remember I read this one and, got a lot of like, it really got the ideas flowing. And then like, as far as the cover was concerned, I flipped through a lot of, Paperbacks from Hell, and kind of wanted to capture a vibe at least similar to that. I wish I could have had like an illustration for the cover, but budget wise and timeline wise, it just like didn't work out that way. But like at least with the font and things like that, the fun like 80-ish kind of tagline, that's sort of I got that from Paperbacks from Hell, and from really just like studying those covers and thinking like what could work. You typically want like a cool visual, and then you want like a fun tagline, and then you have like, a certain type of font that's like really of the era. But one like kind of like obscure and weird inspiration I wanted to talk about was, okay, so in the book, the whole like conceit of the story is that Ernesto's baby brother Judas, his spirit kind of rises from the grave and latches onto Ernesto. It's like this scene taking place in the graveyard that's, I guess you could call it a possession scene. I'm actually not completely sure what you would call what Judas does to Ernesto. I like to say he infests him, but yeah, it's more of like a possession scene, I guess. And I remember when I was trying to map out like, what can I do here? Like, what would be the coolest thing to do? And like, what's like the visual of it? What does it look like when this happens? I was kind of thinking back, and there's this book I checked out in elementary school called World's Best True UFO Stories, which I think is hilarious that true is in quotation marks even on the cover. And one of the encounters like detailed in here is this one from Russia where, I don't know, they saw like it's a really weird story. They saw like a spaceship, the spaceship left, it had like robot people, and then a couple days after the spaceship left, these kids spot this guy, and it's literally just like one or two sentences in here where it says, he stood for a while, got on his knees, touched the grass, and then started to wave his arms about. And I don't know why, but as a kid, that one little description, as well as I'm sure the image, like really stuck with me. And I remember when I was kind of mapping out visually what I wanted that scene to look like, because I mean, it's an important scene in the book, you know what I mean? It's like a huge part of the book. And I was like, what does this scene look like, And that's the image sort of that came into my head. I imagined him dropping to his knees and his arms kind of like shooting outwards, and then he just like, I don't know, and like his arms are moving wildly. I was like, I think, like I started thinking back, because I was like, where does that image come from? And I thought about it, and I was like, well, it comes from this book, I even tracked it down on eBay after, because I was like, well, I have to revisit it now, if it's inspiring me all these years later. And yeah, I just kind of thought it over, and I was like, yeah, that's how I imagine it. And I think it's cool that it came from like this really random thing from my childhood, because it's easy to point at like a Pet Cemetery or a Fifth Child or a Talk to Me, which are more like obvious inspirations. Like I can immediately pinpoint in my head, oh, I was inspired by, this, or like this got me thinking about what I wanted the book to be. But then when I look at, randomly this book that I checked out from the library as a kid, and that all these years later, it could really stay in my mind and still affect the work I'm making today, I think that's just like a really cool thing. So I just wanted to give a shout out to this book, because I don't even know how many people know about this book, like it's really just like a collection of UFO encounters and stuff. But I mean, shout out, you never know what's gonna stick with someone. you know, you never know which of your books is going to really stay with someone. So I don't know, I just thought that was awesome, and I wanted to talk about my inspirations a bit.